This poem is titled B, the Capital. 'Cause ain't no other way to be than the capital character boasting two humps on the unswerving plumb line of the letter B in Black Girl Magic. We out here. We be clattering into museums and saloons. A dazzling spectrum of melanin, sun-kissed orange soda, sweet lips dripping theory and compliments that'll make you wish you never drank the Kool-Aid laced lies about our legacy. We be a ministry. Call our incantations church. Bring the belongings of your formerly betrothed to our backyards, burn them in ritual, soothe your soul in the roux of our cast iron pots. We be conjuring in the colors our coffee turns while we drizzle cream and stir with spoons that clink the sides of Granny's teacup. When we swirl, we call the sunken ones back up. Named them all Lazarus. Our granddaddies taught us when to cock the guns, so we loaded them with black tourmaline bullets. Buckshots embossed the Beatitudes in braille across the backsides of ne'er-do-wells. We be regal. Call our coils crowns, matriarchs in the making, rulers of undiscovered empires nestled at the intersection of bosom, belt, and impure waists. We be Mamiwata. Bearers of destiny, damming the Nile behind eyelashes. We be sobrinas of adobe dust, born in love with the wind, so our voices carry loud seeds of wisdom that were whispered to dandelion wishes, manicures polished to glisten. Under sandia sunsets, we sip mango nectar from mason jars and spit watermelon seeds into the Rio Grande. Lay sunflowers for Oshun as alms, invite her blessings by kissing our palms and tending our honey pots. We be warriors, swords sharpened to eviscerate, for debates can be lengthy and our life expectancy don't always afford us time to waste. So we be stolen sorceresses, penciled into the margins, refusing to be erased. Our inkwells are infinite, indigo details indelible, irrefutable hustle incubated intellectually in coven spaces. We be aggregating content, testing feedback loops inside bamboo hoops, aggravating the patriarchy every time we open mouth, cackle at the wondrousness of it all. Rare and precious, few and vital, incumbent on your liberation, significant, here, always been. Magic. Thank you. Complete your census. You count, so you should be counted. Ain't no such thing as an insignificant demographic. We out here.
Welcome to Mawad Online, everyone. This is our monthly installation of BLATANT, a forum on art, joy, and rage, and coming to you presented by the Museum of the African Diaspora every third Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, and BLATANT, laying on top of the platform of Artist as First Responder in partnership with Museum of African Diaspora, is an embodied designation, a destination, an interactive platform, and a series of discussions and publications that highlight the work of artists whose creative practices heal communities and save lives. I am forum curator and host Ashara Ekundayo, and honored to join you today and visit with my comrades, my beloveds, my sisters, Savannah Shange and Amara Tabor-Smith, who will hopefully come onto the screen any moment now. We opened the portal, as we do every month, with poetry, and we heard Be the Capital by my friend, Sister Jedi, Ebony Isis Booth out of Albuquerque, New Mexico today, and her encouragement to stand up and be counted. And so I want to thank her for her continued practice today and for, bringing it straight, straight to the heart and straight from the heart. Welcome, Amara. Welcome, Savannah, to the conversation today. Welcome to BLATANT. So good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Ashara and Savannah.
Yeah. I am usually at home in Oakland, California, but I am on a road trip right now to visit my family. And so I want to give a land acknowledgement to where I've been and where I'm at, which is in Utah and in Wyoming. And this is the unceded land of the Shoshone, the Paiute, the Gohoot, and the Ute nation. It's the unceded land, meaning that the indigenous folk, the First Nation folk, have never given, sold, presented this land to the government by treaty or otherwise. And so this is also stolen land. And so we honor this land knowing that the people whose ancestors, whose blood and bones are part of the integralness of our creativity here is that our creativity is also being fueled by their ancestors, by our ancestors, that we honor them and honor the land knowing that it is loved and asking permission to walk upon it and to create with a light step and a big stick right now, and that we pour water for them today. So I want to invite both of you to talk a little bit about the land that you're on, and that the ancestors who hold and fuel your creative practice as well, as we just, chop it up here on love, rage, the politics, the music, the movement, where we are right now is a global conversation specifically of Black women in films, where we stand and how we are creating today. Amara, let's start with you.
Blessings, everyone. I am currently on occupied Huichin Lishan Ohlone territory, also known as West Oakland, California, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Give thanks.
I'm joining you from Chochenyo Ohlone land, and I offer gratitude to the land ancestors here in East Oakland. And I also offer power and solidarity to the Chochenyo Ohlone, Muwekma Ohlone, Pomo folks who live now and are fighting against ongoing genocide throughout the Bay Area, throughout Northern California. And I just encourage us all to link our honoring of our ancestors and of the land ancestors with power and solidarity to Indigenous people who are living and fighting now, as well as Indigenous folks from throughout Turtle Island that have gathered in the Bay Area as a source and a place of Indigenous power building across space.
Oh, yes. Give thanks for that. I want to invite everyone to take a breath, take a deep breath if you can. And as we continue to be in this place of filtering through fire, through smoke, we know that the element and the energy of fire allows us to continue to fight, to train, and to win. But that we take a breath for those who cannot take a deep breath right now. And for the people who are, and the animals, not just the humans, but all of the beings that are breathing through smoke right now, that we want to honor and breathe for them. And that we want to honor and breathe for our ancestors who are coming, into this space with us. So generally what has happened as far as BLATANT is that often the artists introduce each other, that you all speak about your influence either or your knowing of each other's work. And today we're going to do it a little differently. I'm going to read just a little bit of the bios from each of you. But if there is also a way for each of you to talk about how you know each other's work. And what was really fun is that both of you were like, I can't wait to get into, I can't wait to get into Amara's work. I can't wait to get into Savannah's work. Like, how are we going to do this in this, 55-minute conversation? So let me tell you about, my beloved sister friend, Amara Tabor-Smith, as you all know, is in Oakland, California, is an choreographer, performance maker, artistic director of Deep Waters Dance Theater, describes her work as conjure art. She makes interdisciplinary site-specific community responsive performances and works utilizing Yoruba, Lukumi, spiritual technologies to address global social issues of environmental justice, race, gender, identity, and belonging. And she creates ritual experiences where audiences also and performers converge in mutual vulnerability and transformation. The little bit that I will say about my experience with Amara is that the very first time I met her, and I don't remember how many years ago it was, but I remember where we were. We were in Berkeley, California, at La Pina Cultural Center. And my brother friend, Chef Bryant Terry, was DJing. and Amara was in performance with her company. And part of the performance meant that she had cooked a pot of goodness and was feeding people, literally. So I met her. She walked up to me and said, "Open your mouth," and proceeded to put her hand in my mouth with some food, and it was good. It was so good. And then proceeded to, go on to the, now I'm sitting here slayed, done. I'm done. I was like, what is happening right now? So that's how I've come to know you, is that someone who brings the meal and invites us to take it in and to swallow and to enjoy it, to let the whole goodness of it wash over your entire palate. So it is always my honor, always my pleasure, my friend, to be with you on screen, in person, in the street. So thank you, Amara. My sister comrade, Savannah Shange, Dr. Shange, because we want to honor that work. Now, we're going to honor that work. That is a commitment, my friend. That is a commitment. Is an urban anthropologist who works at the intersections of race, place, spirituality, and the state. She is an assistant professor of anthropology at the University of California, Santa Cruz, with research interests in circulated and lived forms of blackness, ethnographic ethics, Afro-pessimism, and queer of color critique. There is a lot to be said about Dr. Shange, and recently we had the opportunity to be in ceremony together in the streets during one of the many uprisings in downtown Oakland, California. There was a prayer being offered. There was an altar being built. There was the centering of Blackness and of Black women. And through our relationships with our Dharma community, our Buddhist community, our meditators, our Dharma community, who we call Sangha, who we call spiritual practice community, Savannah built and invited us to walk the path. To walk the path, to breathe, to dance the path, and to honor and center our Black family, our trans family, our siblings who have been killed by state-sanctioned violence. That the prayer and the dance and the music and the pouring of water is very much part of the art practice that I've come to know you for, but also the academic who thinks and twists and rattles and disrupts, our ways of thinking. And this idea, this construct called Afro-pessimism that I'm coming to know through your radical Black feminist tradition. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you and your work, writer, poet. I see you and want to welcome you here. So we're gonna start, Amara, with you talking about your work. So we're going to show a series of videos and a series of images. And in between those, you can share what you'd like to share with us. And just as an entree into the first video, the reason that we've selected them or placed them in the order in which we have, it's based on my experience with your site specificity. And so the first piece, Room Full of Black Men, was part of a longer 5-hour installation through the streets of San Francisco, where I came to know many of the artists that I continue to love. But this specific piece, I'll just say that we were many, many souls crammed into bodies, sitting on floor, trying to make enough space for these men to do their thing. So with that, room full of Black men. Thank you, Elizabeth, for running tech for us today. So I think we're gonna stop the video there because we're going to show a few other videos. Amara, do you want to come onto the screen and tell us about what we were seeing and also finally hearing?
Yeah. So that was a short clip from like you said, a 5.5 hour site-specific work that was called "He Moves Swiftly but Gently Down the Not Too Crowded Street." And it was a piece that I created in honor of my dance teacher, Ed Mock, who was a beloved San Francisco figure, a choreographer, dance teacher who passed away from AIDS in 1986. And there are a few things. One is that this was the first work that I did where I brought Yoruba spiritual ritual inside of the making of my work. Usually it's the underpinning. Prior to making that work, ritual was something that I kept for myself to underpin the work, but it was the first time that I actually brought my performers in it. And I had a visitation from my teacher, and he was like, it's time to make that piece for me. And it really was a seance. Quite frankly, it was a seance to call his spirit back on the streets of San Francisco, and also to remember a time where San Francisco was a much different place. I was born and raised there. And that section specifically was titled Room Full of Black Men. The piece traveled through parts of San Francisco where Ed would be known to frequent. We started in front of a space that had been his dance studio, and that space was across the street from a restaurant where he was a well-known figure, would get free meals, and we occupied that restaurant as well. And that section really was meant to highlight the absence of Black men in San Francisco by overwhelming the audience with their presence. The population of Black people in San Francisco was much larger than it is now when I came up. And it was a way of really highlighting the current absence. And then that section, Room Full of Black Men, was really where Ed, his spirit really landed in that work. And what it got me thinking about was, even though I work, you know, mostly with Black women and Black femme identified folks, I realized I hadn't done a work that really was honoring specifically Black women. So that piece, that section, was the inspiration for a work that I'm 5 years inside of now called House Full of Black Women, that addresses the displacement, well-being, and sex trafficking of Black women and girls in Oakland. And I don't know if you want to show that at this point, a little excerpt from that work.
Yes, let's go to that now.
Sorry about that.
So go ahead. What I was going to say is that there's an echo. What I was going to say Black men is that the traveling of it, the moving around the spaces and walking with the men and walking with you, that along the path there were sites, locations, and other things that were happening. And I remember being down the alley and this powder being thrown on us. I remember just being kind of covered in red and blue. I remember there being many different, men doing different things that, appeared to be dances, but that there was also very much a mounting that was happening for different people. And I remember actually walking up upon you. I had gotten off the bus and you were tied to like this doorway and tied to a tree in the street, and you were just twirling and twirling and twirling. And it was, that was maybe a block from where we were walking to. So I'm just stating, like, there were different locations on different corners. The site wasn't just one road, it was many things. I think we have the video ready now.
So yeah, so that work, this is what I'm in the middle of. This is the Afro now for me, is working on House Full of Black Women. So with this project, following making the work for my teacher, Ed Mock, at that point, there was no going back for me in terms of ritual had to guide the work. The spiritual technologies that I work with are essential for the making and performance of. Most of my work is site specific, site responsive, community specific. It was also really important because I live in Oakland, that I make a piece that is about and for Oakland. So House Full of Black Women is not a work that is intended to travel. It is for Oakland. It's about the Oakland experience, and Oakland and the experience of Black women in Oakland is vital to, is a, so to speak, a character, or it informs, the landscape informs the work. Oakland is a collaborator. That's what I want to say. And this work is co-created by myself, longtime collaborator and my art wife, Ellen Sebastian Chang, and a group of 20 core members of House Full of Black Women, and they are artists, they are performing artists, they are activists, they are sex trafficking abolitionists, they are midwives, they are architects, they are somatic practitioners. So they, all of us do so many things, and really, House Full of Black Women is performed as a series of episodes, and the episodes are representative of what we are navigating, displacement, sex trafficking, and fatigue, everything that we go through as Black women and femme identified folks. So some of them are more performance based and some of them are more experiential. My work, I started calling my work conjure art 5 years ago, and I'm always wary of monikers because once you call something something, then it becomes a thing. And so at some point, the idea of conjure art will be obsolete. That's my plan. But right now, I gave it that term to speak about work that is really integrating, where the art practice and the spiritual practice can't be separated. And that, for me, has really always been the case, but I think that I was more in the closet with my performers around my spiritual practice being the underpinning of the work, because I think I was feeling uncomfortable at the time of like, what does it mean to, impose a belief system? But when I really understood that that's not what I'm doing, that if you're working with me, this is the journey we're on. It took me a while to get comfortable with being able to do that. And so, as I was saying about House Full of Black Women, it happens as a series of episodes. The episode that we were able to do twice, most of them have only been done once, but the one that we've done twice has been Black Women Dreaming. And Black Women Dreaming was an episode where we actually, for 7 days and nights, Black women in a secret location could come and sleep and dream. And we had over 150 women over those 7 days and nights come to sleep and dream. And with that was a public installation that was an installation that anyone could come to. But the Black Women Dreaming, the event of the ritual of rest, was only for Black women and Black femme identified folks. And they would sign up, and then they would get vague directions. We thought about like the Underground Railroad, what are the markers where you'll find it? So they didn't get an address, they got markers of where to turn and where to go and where to take the freeway and a few street names, but coming to a place that we have never divulged. And in conjunction with that, we created installations. The first year in 2017 was at Chapter 510 in the Department of Make-Believe, which is a youth writing organization that's on Telegraph and 23rd. And that's where the installation was co-created by Shelley Davis Roberts, Alexa Burrell, who also does the video for us and does soundscape, and Dana Kawano, and Yoshi Asai. And then the second time we did it, women were asking for it to happen again. And so you most graciously, Ashara, gave us space at Ashara Ekundayo Gallery last year, and we did it again. And that installation again was co-created by Shelley Davis Roberts, who's also a dancer with us, and Alexa Burrell and Stephanie Johnson, who did lighting. And all of the episodes, I will say, are born out of conversations. We get together monthly and we talk about what's going on. And really how that came about in 2015 was we were sitting at the table doing our check-in, and everybody said, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. And then I was just joking and I said, well, we need to make an episode where we just sleep. And then it was like, seriously,
Yeah.
don't do that. And what was really important at that point was to insist that we would do an episode and get funding for something that nobody was going to see. That Black women were not going to be on display because that is not restful. And that's what, you know, we're either invisibilized or we're hyper visible and ogled and spectated, right? And so that was not going to happen. And so, you know, even funders asked, well, how will we know it happened? I was like, you will feel it. You will feel it. You will feel the vibration of the rest of Black women. And, you know, the underpinning for my work now is that even though the work is, you know, addressing issues of, you know, social and environmental justice and Black women's health and well-being, I'm not interested in educating an audience about a topic or doing trauma art. I'm interested in how, you know, my question is always, how can the work shift the vibration on the issue? And that's where the focus is. So, you know, it is rare that you're going to come to a piece, an episode where we're talking about, you know, the sex trafficking of girls. You will not see that on display. You will not hear that trauma. Sorry, that's my dog. But you know, it is, you know,
move into.
Yeah, you want to move into the, yes.
You're loading it up. You're setting us up to see when I'm thinking about your work as we continue to move inside of this cataclysmic, you know, structure that we're inside of for this pandemic, and how perhaps your work, this work, is also feeding into, you know, COVID-19, the impact of that on your work, and this sister song circle.
So can I give you a little lead in for this? Yeah, just quickly. So, you know, it's always about engaging community in the making of the work, performing of the work, activating it. And this next video that folks will see is something we did in June now, I believe it was in June, in response to shelter in place. I wanted, you know, the question was, can we, how do we promote social intimacy while physically distancing? And Black women need each other. And so this was the guiding question for this ritual.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth, for loading it up.
So we did a lot of grieving and celebrating and responding to both the grief and devastation of this time, and also, as my dear friend Gina Breedlove would say, the dangerous opportunity. That there are ways in which, through the chaos and fatigue and uncertainty of this time, has also been this opportunity for us to actually get more rest. Some of us are resting more. Some of us are more grounded and more centered and more in our bodies than before COVID. And the complexity, you know, what I'll just sort of leave it at right in this moment is, you know, we have been guided this year in our in House Full of Black Women by Eshu Elegba, the Orisha Eshu Elegba, who is the disruptor, but also the one who that really brings forward the idea that chaos precedes creation, and also the duality that is inherent, that it's, you know, things are not all bad or good, that there is, you know, there are these contradictions that are actually our human nature. As I flex this muscle lengthens. That duality is always present, but in a culture that's predicated on the binary, that things are either all bad or all good, we tend to not know how to deal with we don't know necessarily from a social perspective how to navigate that complexity. And this has been the gift of Elegba with this, is that both things can be true.
That's right. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing just a little bit of what's happening in your head and in your heart, and the offerings that you share with us in community. And, you know, the conversations of Blatant, you know, move across genre and across geography. And so, you know, that the work is alive and vibrant in those ways. You know, generally, I think the expectation has been that the conversations presented by the museum would primarily be visual artists. And of course, the visual artists are also, you know, able to be movement artists, sound artists, musicians, new media artists as well. And so the fact that House Full of Black Women and your work incorporates and invites all of those different genres to move through community with you is special and beautiful and so rich and generous of you. So thank you. Savannah Shange, let's move into, for the second half of our conversation, let's move into your work and come back onto the screen and can you tell me a little bit more about your work as an academic? I know Amara is also a professor at Stanford University, and you're a professor of anthropology at UC Santa Cruz. But this integration of you as the artist, as the writer and performer as well. Take us into the presentation that you have for us today around that.
Sure. I mean, first, I just want to offer gratitude for this space. I mean, both to the museum for carving a space for the presence of Black people across diasporas in the city of San Francisco, where it's been so expertly and surgically sliced away brutally over the years and in very like quotidian everyday ways. But also so much thanks to you, Ashara, for creating Blatant, for maintaining and cultivating a space for not just Black arts work, but Black arts practice, Black arts healing. And Amara, come on. You can't hear us snapping and clapping and jumping and dancing. Conjure art, the Afro now, come on. I was just so deeply fed. I didn't get to have that spoonful that you gave to Ashara, but I felt deeply fed today. So I just want to express my thanks to you for your long form practice and what you've shared with us today. And particularly thinking about this piece around space for Black womanhood, which I feel like is part of what I'm going to offer later, gets into like, what do those spaces look like, and particularly in San Francisco. So I enter this conversation from a really different angle. For me, my arts practice, I think of it as like a lowercase a artist, right? The kind of arts practice that is personal, quotidian, every day, and it's without an audience, right? It's a lowercase a arts practice that is complete in the doing, right? And it's also shaped by my years training in the arts. And so I feel like for a lot of folks, they experience a personal kind of a creative practice that then as they come into their like adulthood gets sharpened into like a professional practice that gets shared and amplified. And in many ways, my path to where I am right now as a scholar is the reverse, right? So I came from conservatory training. I trained for 12 years as an actor. And I come out of two very different conservatory traditions that then have transformed into what for many people looks like I'm not an artist, right? I'm an academic, I'm a writer, an educator, but really all the ways that I am those things is shaped by my training in both the Black arts movement tradition. So I trained as a young person at the New Freedom Theater in Philadelphia, which is a arts institution that offered performing arts training for the young people of Philadelphia, directly out of the Black arts movement, right? So we learned Nikki Giovanni poems, and we're doing Pearl Primus technique and the whole thing. And also, oh, that clicking is coming from my earrings. My bad, y'all. When Black femme praxis goes too far. Let me take this out. And I'm also a graduate of Tisch School of the Arts, where I have I have conservatory training in the ultra European experimental theater tradition, right? And so I feel like bringing together this really like peak, in some ways, peak white supremacist form of conservatory training and a peak black masculinist, right, form of conservatory training has really shaped me in the ways that I, show up for the world. And like I grew up hearing, a BFA and $1.50 would get you a ride on the subway. And these days, child, that $1.50 won't even get you a ride on the subway. And everything I know about being an anthropologist, right, really comes from what I know about the nature of human life from acting. And so, Ashara, you earlier were, giving props for me doing the PhD and becoming a doctor, but really all of that was just, checking boxes and reading books. The work of being an anthropologist, and that for me, that means the work of being someone who documents, amplifies, and values Black life really comes from my work on the stage. And so I'm sure many people have read the work of Christina Sharp. In her work, she talks about what does it mean to put breath back into the Black body. And for me, that's what my scholarship is about. That's also what my lowercase a arts practice is about. And so for today, I want to offer two like little kind of moments of these practices of putting breath back in the Black body. The first is from the Alter for Black Lives project that I worked on collaboratively that Ashara contributed to and mentioned earlier. And the second is a small excerpt from my book. Does that work for everyone? I feel like it's hard to be in consent in this space, this Zoom space, but does that feel like a place to go?
Yeah, that's good.
Ashe, let's do it. So I'll start with the Alter project. And so as many folks remember, the United States, or what is considered called that now, opened into righteous open rebellion this May. In the immediate wake of the murder of George Floyd, but of course, in the wake of 5 centuries of dispossession and structural genocide. During that time, though, we were also trying to protect Black life by being distant. And so in collaboration with my community members, Maisha Davis and Mia Birdsong, we tried to think about what can we create as a public space that allows the space to grieve Black life and honor it while also doing the work of resistance and fighting and combating, right? And so we put together an Alter Her Black Life outside of the East Bay Meditation Center in downtown Oakland. And I'll share some images here. There was a kind of a more traditional community altar. Folks have seen these, right? People come, they give offerings. And we started with some things and people came and added candles as a place to really come and just literally offer ofrendas or offer physical honorings of the ancestors who were stolen too soon. On that altar, we each contributed. And so for instance, what you see right here in the corner, this is like a collage that I put together as a vision board as my own lowercase a arts practice that I do at home and with my child. And I brought that practice here to the ancestral altar as a way of weaving together these big picture moments, right? With the ways that we sustain and celebrate Black life in our day-to-day lives. You see here, offering foods, offering stones, right? We know this practice. It was important for me to combine the offering practice with an embodied practice, particularly coming out of the Buddhist tradition. I'm a Buddhist practitioner, and this is outside of a meditation center, which has really been focused on centering Black and colored lives. And so we also had a moving meditation that went stretched down Harrison, right? And so along the sidewalk, there were places for folks to literally place their feet and breathe with the images of Black people who were stolen from us too soon. It went one direction, right? So both preserving this idea, very much in keeping with the sister song that you shared, Amara, how can we be together and also give space? And how can that space not just be 6 feet, right? But also the space that it takes to grieve at your own pace. So in a walking meditation, it is a moving meditation, but it's one that goes at your own pace. And so to see folks walking, so the folks walking across in the middle of the screen are crossing from one image to the other, right? Having the opportunity to stand, as Ashara does here, and really be present with Black life, right? And present with their own grief, and take that grief and shape it into a commitment. And so I'd like to take a few steps together here and just to be able to take some moments to honor just 5 of the 40 different placards that we placed down. 3 of them honor people whose lives were stolen across the US, and 2 from right here in Northern California. And so if folks have the capacity, I invite you to ground yourself. So we're going to move into just a few moments of physical practice. So find your feet on the ground, moving your butt someplace where we can really feel ourselves. Take a few clearing breaths, breathing in, feeling the top of your head as the closest point to the heavens, your butt, the sole of your feet, so close to the mantle, the core of the earth, being drawn closer to this rock that's hurling through space. And if we're ready, we'll move through 10 breaths together in honor of these ancestors. Are you ready?
All
right, I'm seeing some writing, Ashe. Breonna Taylor, her breath was stolen March 13th of this year in Louisville, Kentucky. We're going to offer a gatha in the tradition of Zen tradition, where we will breathe in and offer one thought, breathe out on another, right? So breathing in, I see her face. Breathing out, I speak her name, and I encourage you to speak with us, Breonna Taylor. Breathing in, I commit to protect the living. Breathing out, I know we will be free. LAYLEEN, POLANCO, XTRAVAGANZA. Her breath was stolen from us June 7th, 2019 in New York City. Breathing in, I see her face. Breathing out, I speak her name. LAYLEEN, POLANCO, extravaganza. Breathing in, I commit to protect the living. Breathing out, I know we will be free. Jessica Williams, her breath was stolen May 19th, 2010 in the city of San Francisco. Breathing in, I see her face. Breathing out, I speak her name, Jessica Williams. Breathing in, I commit to protect the living. Breathing out, I know we will be free. GABBY NEVAREZ, their breath was stolen March 2014, Sacramento, California. Breathing in, I see her face. Breathing out, I speak her name, GABBY NEVAREZ. Breathing in, I commit to protect the living. Breathing out, I know we will be free. Nina Pop, whose breath was stolen May 3rd of this year in Sikeston, Missouri. Breathing in, I see her face. Breathing out, I speak her name. Nina Pop. Breathing in, I commit to protect the living. Breathing out, I know we will be free. These invitations are offered as a way for us to be with the breadth, power, and sacredness of Black life everywhere that it is. And though we cannot pour water into these physical glasses, I invite you to offer libations, physical, spiritual, to really honor the ancestral presence and to honor the trauma of being made an ancestor too soon. Before going on, I just wanted to be in space with Ashara and Amara and bow to you all and to everyone joining us for your practice in honor of Black life. I'm going to take a hard left right now from the space of spirit to the space of the page, but I offer these different modes because I am trying to translate and do this work in the space of academia. And so I offer these few pages about Black life in Frisco as a space to be. And if you need space to mute, rest, sleep, log off, it'll only take about 10 minutes. So. The toes of Sierra's kitty-sized white on white Nike Air Force Ones squeaked as she dragged them across the speckled linoleum floor. "Go on ahead, we ain't got all day," said Jeff. Craning her neck in order to make sure he could see her, rolling her eyes. At all 6+ feet of him, she exaggeratedly picked up her feet and speed scooted towards the principal's office. Jeff, the security advisor on duty, looked at me over on my perch at a student desk in the hall and broke into a wide grin. He shook his head and tried to suppress laughter at Sierra's comedic timing. That school building we were in housed the Robeson Justice Academy, and it was plagued by the same faulty infrastructure and lax upkeep that impacted the rest of the SFUSD. Half the classrooms at Robeson had radiators that never turned off, even on the sunniest of days, while the rest of the rooms were jerry-rigged with heaters that teachers had to bring from home because the radiators never turned on. I know we have a couple of SFUSD graduates in up in the Zoom room, you know what I'm talking about? My room was one of the former, and it was so hot that I spent my time in the hallway, and that hallway was really a perch, that was a perk for me as an ethnographer. I had a plastic chair with a flip down desk stationed outside the door for when me or a sweaty student got too hot and we could escape into the hall. There, as I graded papers or fiddled with field notes, I got to see the parade of smaller and larger beings round in the corner near my room as they made their way along the square path created by the high school's 4 hallways. Now, Sierra seemed to come past at least once a day during her freshman year, usually on her own, but sometimes escorted by Jeff, the brawny school security guard who spent most of the last 10 years at a bouncer at gay clubs in the Bay. His round cocoa face sparkled with steel hoops, and his eyebrow, septum, and even a labret piercing poked through his beard. The imposing "don't even think about stepping to me" air to his self-presentation was scented with a queer impishness, exemplified by his nickname, Sweetie Pie, which is also the moniker of a weekly party he continues to host at a local bear bar. Jeff's official title as student advisor was creatively designed by the leadership of the school so they could avoid hiring a security guard from the district pool of union guards who were notorious for sexual harassment and other issues. But this kind of language shift from guard to advisor also points to the ways that this school tried to be exceptional or different from its peers, right? Located in one of Frisco's last working class neighborhoods, this public high school was founded by a group of parent activists, teachers, and youth who wanted to offer social justice-based college prep education to students of color in Southeast San Francisco. That sounds good, right? We're about that. But even with his fancy title, with his piercings, his blackness, his queerness, and his dessert-themed nickname, there were still times that Jeff served the same function of school security across the United States, removing mostly Black children from classrooms and delivering them to their administrative fate. He, like every other staff member at Robeson, and like most of us in this Zoom room right now, were caught in a late liberal double bind. We work for institutions that we know are soaked in bias and inequity, even as those same institutions have, more or less robust commitments to ending bias and inequity. Robeson's status as an institution that has this kind of exceptionally robust commitment to social justice didn't map predictably onto its disciplinary practices. That same year that Sierra enrolled as a freshman, the school had the highest rate of suspensions for Black students in the city of San Francisco. So in my book, Progressive Dystopia, I try to deal with these tensions between coalition, anti-Blackness, and the state by documenting the afterlives of slavery as lived in the sucker-free city. And I examine what we think of as progressive reforms and what they cost Black communities. I think about winning, right? We gotta win this campaign, winning as the dominant logic of social justice work. And I ask, who loses when we win, right? Not so much we can just get the we to be ever more expanding so more and more people win, but to ask what becomes impossible when we engage in contest as the primary mode of Black politics, right? We could also think about this in concert with Black women dreaming. What if all we do is work and never rest? If all we know about transformation has to do with what we make, right? And not what we are. To me, this is the differential between revolution and abolition. Revolution seeks to win control over the state and its resources, while abolition wants to quit playing and raise the stadium of settler-slaver society for good. So abolition, especially for those of us on Black Twitter, has become, it's kind of a buzzword. We see it everywhere. It's in social media. It's on grant applications. It's on mission statements. It's on posters of talks that people are giving, me being people. But how do we operationalize it? So for me, in my work, abolition is not like a synonym necessarily for resistance. It encompasses the ways in which Black people and our accomplices work within, against, and beyond the state in the service of collective liberation. As an analytic, abolition demands specificity, the very kinds of granularity that ethnography, that theater offer in the accounting of the daily practices that facilitate Black material and symbolic death. And so for me in my work, I think of what I do as a kind of abolitionist anthropology, right? And it emerges from a deep relationality with both ancestors and contemporaries. And I practice it as a mode of reparative caring, right? That seeks to be accountable to what's unaccounted for in these social justice schemes, right? I didn't write the book as a manual to be like a better, like more radical scholar or artist. I only offer it as a provocation to care more than we can know, right? To extend our analyses past the ruins of the world, and maybe even of academia as we know it. Echoing the multilingual chaos that sings through the sidewalks of San Francisco, I tell these stories in several registers at once, layering Black English, neighborhood dialects, academic prose into the ethnographic text. And I do that inspired by Amy Cox's assertion that Black girls engage what she calls a social choreography, right? That our dancing through life can disrupt and discredit normative reading practices that assess young Black women's bodies as undesirable, dangerous, captive, or out of place. And in my work, I attempt to disrupt normative writing practices and to craft a Black girl text that keeps the narrative conventions of academia on its toes. So with that, this is Black Girl Ordinary. Sierra never stops moving and aspires to dance in music videos like Sierra, the multi-platinum R&B star whose name she invokes every time a new teacher hesitates when they see the spelling of her name on the attendance roll. The first time she was in my theater class, she jumped out of her seat to do a quick 8-count footwork and gyration combination, announcing, duh, it's pronounced Sierra. Sierra's projection of self is on the one hand quotidian in its mass market ubiquity, and yet it's dissonant with in the context of the self-styling of most of the school's Black staff, right? Which was dripping in what one teacher, Benita, called Black alterity, right? We got the cowries, the locks, the wraps, right? In contrast, Sierra instantiates what we might call Black girl ordinary, right? In which the ordinary here is an impasse, a break, a beat, a jeté, right? Across time, right? It's a temporal space where people are developing these skills to keep adjusting to newly proliferating pressures to scramble for modes of living on. And in Frisco, those pressures include housing precarity, misogynoir, police terror, street violence, and the grinding disorientation of having been a slave. Or in ordinary, in this sense, is marked by the temporal. We could think of it in that way. It's a beat, it's a break, it's a jeté across the ongoingness of linear time. But in this frame, Black or ordinary is that which signifies on, but doesn't conform to normative notions of gender through, that come through BET and social media and hip hop. But for those of us who are Black girls, who've been Black girls and who love Black girls, we know there's nothing unremarkable about an ordinary Black girl. Sierra, the child Sierra, the pop star, or any other woman child refusing to be disappeared at the margins of common sense. Even ordinary Black girls is allergic to ordinary. Sierra's constant dancing, stomping, booty popping in the hallways and classrooms brings us back to Cox's idea of social choreography as a descriptor of Black girls' creative and strategic engagements with the state. Black Girl Ordinary inverts the logic of the talented 10th. We don't need no lifting, climbing, or saving. Instead, it improvises on social and aesthetic choreographies to disrupt the inherited rhythms of captivity, progressive or otherwise. Regular, degular, schmegular Black girls stay dancing in the face of state-sanctioned slow death. Ours is flesh made fierce. You might also know Black Girl Ordinary by her government name, #Black Girl Magic. A circulated, self-feed, carefree mode of Black femininity, Black Girl Magic has both been celebrated for its affirmation of Black women's thrival and critiqued for its association with a certain stratum of light and curly bourgeois Negroes, right? But of course, Black Girl Ordinary and Black Girl Magic are coterminous. I use Black Girl Ordinary to center a materialist reading of Black gender, right? And to refuse that misogynoir or hatred of Black women that wants to elide what is common to Black girls in order to elevate that which is seen as exceptional. We are conjurers, all. What's magical is that we're still here, right? Black Girl Ordinary can also serve as a counterweight to what we might think of as Black boy special. a category of reverence and urgency that's coalesced around a century of hand-wringing over the fate of Black men. At Robeson, those hands are wrung to the tempo of respectability-driven anxiety about the very real hyper-incarceration of Black men, right? Those hands wipe away tears shed in staff meetings over having so few Black boys in a given graduating class. So only 4 Black men crossed the stage at this school at the 2013 and 2014 commencements, and a whopping 7 out of the 56 graduates of 2015 were Black boys. So in this school setting, both Black and non-Black staff participated in institutional focus on Black boys, right? And some Black staff saw working with Black boys essential to their identity. You know, like in this one sister, Nyla, was a fair-skinned English teacher. She talked about going to the mat for her students when some people tried to threaten her students with not being able to participate in graduation, right? She said, they said some of my Black male advisors couldn't walk on stage. And she ended up walking out of the meeting because she said, at that point, I'm not going to have a professional beef with you. It's going to be personal, right? Maurice, a young Black retention counselor and Frisco native in his early 20s, agreed with her. He said, I feel that. The graduation means so much to an African-American male. It's like being drafted to the league or something. So while both Nyla and Maurice lift up their concerns about Black boys, if we take a closer look at the data that comes out of this school, Black girls didn't fare much better. At the 2013 and 2014 graduations, only 5 Black girls graduated each year compared to 4 Black boys. In 2015, when 7 Black boys graduated, only 4 Black girls crossed the same stage. Zara, the college counselor, she explained the gender differential and how Black children were treated in this way. She said, because there's this bleeding thing of like, Black boys are not being educated, you know, all these things, they're gonna get caught up in the street and all these different things. When a Black boy is completely off the Richter, but then shows some kind of promise or progress, people are just so ready to grab him and coddle him in such a frustrating way. And I think for Black girls, I don't think there's that much space. There's a fear associated with angry Black women, like angry Black young girls. And I feel that folks don't necessarily know how to deal with that. Zara uses spatial language in rendering the terrain of racialized gender, whereby this institutional fear of ordinary Black girls compresses their range of motion. They can't dance because there's not that much space for Sierra and her homegirls. And unfortunately, I think that's true of so many spaces that we are made to survive in, from the art world to academia to the track on E14. We live in a world that's shaped to harm us. And I'm so grateful for the work of Amara, of Ashara, and so many others teaching us how to dance ourselves free. I think I'll stop there.
Over here waving hands and throwing handkerchiefs and all the things, sister. Just wow. I invite us to take a breath into that lesson, that inquiry that you just gave us. So I know there's some folks with messages inside the thread talking about I needed this and wow and yes. Thank you. Thank you for just a little bit of the lesson today. I have, we're running a little late. I want to wrap this up. I have one question for you all, and then we'll have the final question. But it's really about the requirements that you have for yourself and freedom. What are your requirements for being able to free yourself in order to show up fully for your art practice? You desire and pleasure play a role in how you define that freedom for yourself. Amara?
I just have to say thank you so much, Savannah. I'm so deeply moved by your work and words. So I don't know that I have a clear answer right now, but what I will say is, committing to the process, because freedom is a process. It's a direction. It's not a place. You know, it's a constant, it's a practice. It's a practice. And getting free for me is about figuring out what my self-care is, what my care is for my beloved community, and how I keep showing up for myself and them, and fully and honestly. And that is a practice. That it's not, the recipe is, the stew keeps cooking is what it is. It's like you eat along the way, but the stew has to keep cooking. It's never done. And it's the commitment. And it's the commitment to finding the fleeting balance of joy and grief, and making space for those emotions, and rest, and forgiveness for failure and stumbling. That failure and stumbling are also necessary for the journey of freedom. That there is no freedom without that. It's like babies. They don't learn to walk by getting up. They learn by stumbling, and like that, and finding it and losing it, and finding it and losing it, and committing to that. Thank you, Savannah. Thank you.
Thank y'all. You know, I also don't, you know, when I think about this question, I always think about that quote from Assata, when she's asked about what freedom is, and she says, "You're asking me about freedom? You're asking me about freedom? I know a lot more about what freedom isn't than what freedom is." And that's coming from a sovereign person who literally was freed by community from a jail cell and escaped the closest thing to sovereign territory we have on, you know, the extended of all Turtle Island, right? And so I think if a literal 20th and now 21st century runaway slave can't tell me what freedom is, like, I'm not going to deign to define that. And for me as an abolitionist, it's really about that getting free. The free is about the getting, right? And having faith that, you know, I have liberation on my right arm to remind me anytime I'm writing down, anytime I'm doing anything, that liberation is my birthright. And that I, as a Buddhist practitioner, I'm going to be born many times, right? It's not, this thing, when this day is done, this work is not done. Like, we in this for the long haul. And so for me, what that looks like in terms of abolition is, if you imagine that we are behind a wall, and going back to the side of a wall is just a wall, it can't be broken down, right? If we imagine this wall that is built with the bricks of chattel slavery, ongoing genocide, transphobia, trans antagonism, all of these bricks in front of us, some people are doing the work of imagining what's on the other side of the wall. And that's the work of Afrofuturists, of all kinds of visionary workers, mutual aid projects, folks who are creating, they are building the possibility of what's on the other side of the wall. For me, my practice is really about, first of all, acknowledging that there is a wall. You can't see through that thing. And some of us try to have a spiritual bypass and a political bypass, an artistic bypass, where you try to just do the imagining, like we can vault ourselves over the wall without breaking it down. And so for me, I don't have the chops for the visioning, so I got to work in community with those who are doing their Afrofuture work to stay in the Afro now of taking down the wall, right? Because as some of us are doing the chipping and the critiquing and the breaking and the resisting, we need family, we need community that are making sure there's something to step into on the other side. And so for me, I think we won't even know what freedom is until we can get the fuck out of this place, right?
Woo! Ashe, y'all. So this is Blatant, y'all. Blatant joy, blatant rage, stories from Black women and femmes on art and art making and our creative labor. The closing question I have for you both today is to just give me an example of your last witnessing of blatant joy? Short answer. We're listening. Go ahead. You're on mute though. Yeah, go ahead, Amara.
Oh, okay.
The last witness.
Yeah, the last was we had another gathering out in East Oakland in Liberation Park, out behind Eastmont Mall, and we were circling up before we were gonna make our offering for the community, and we looked up and we could see the moon, the crescent moon, and everybody just broke out into laughter. It was spontaneous, and it was for no reason. It was like, look at the moon, and everybody started laughing, and it was magic. It was magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Savannah.
Okay, I was trying to find this video file, but I don't think I have it. Just this weekend, I went with my sister and my daughter to Sequoia National Park, which y'all drive down there. It's Yosemite without the crowds. It's amazing. So we're in the Sierra Nevadas, and we take this path. We were supposed to go to this place everybody said to go to, but there's a little sign that said Sunset Rock this way. And we said, okay, what's Sunset Rock? So we ended up on this trail through, and this is the forest that literally has the largest tree on the planet, right? Do yourself a favor, go park at this museum in Sequoia National Park, take the Sunset Rock Trail. We walk through this trail with these, incredible great-grandmother trees in this alpine, we're a mile up from the air, and you get to this ending, and it's really like a rock from the moon. There's nobody else in the path but us three Black women, right? 3 different generations, 20 years apart, right? And we sat on that rock and we yodeled our hearts out and heard our voices echo across the Sierra Nevadas. And it was so beautiful, both to see my child and my 20-year-old sister, and just to hear the 3 of us really sing and be witnessed by trees and mountains, trees that know us before we were enslaved, trees that know this land before genocide, trees that are 2,000 years old and can bear witness to the kind of freedom that we're calling forth, who know us before these shapes and structures. And so it was so beautiful to be there.
Yes, thank you. I just want to thank both of you. Thank you for your practices. Thank you for your sharing your children, your friends and siblings and ancestors with us. And I want to thank all of you all for joining us for Blatant. Again, we're here every 3rd Tuesday of the month. I want to, of course, thank Art Bridges, who has been the overall sponsor of the online programming for the Museum of the African Diaspora. Thank you to Elizabeth today for hosting us, and playing tech and, working with us through all of the different twists and turns. There's also a Blatant newsletter. We're working on the 2nd edition. The 1st edition can be found at ashara.io/blatant-zine. And you can download it, you can check it out. There's a piece in there from House Full of Black Women. There's several different forms of art inside of the zine, so check that out. But just want to be sure to support the Museum of the African Diaspora, to support living artists, to see, love, protect, and honor Black women. When we speak, when we tell you to organize, move your body. And you can support the museum, by going online to the website is moadsf, as in San Francisco.org/donate. You can also do it online by texting 56512 and type in the word Moad SF. And so with that, I want to thank you and invite you to join me next month. The 3rd Tuesday of the month will be November 17th from 4 to 5:15-ish. Or so. I will be in conversation with my beloved sister friends, Gia Hamilton, who is my New Orleans sister, and my sister, Dawn Okoro, who is a fashion educator, brilliant visual artist, in Austin, Texas. And with that, we'll say good evening, enjoy the moon, the moonlight, enjoy the darkness, and live inside your blatant art, your blatant joy.
Shay.
Together.
Shay, thank you.
And y'all, Gia is the truth, so come back next month. Gia is the truth in the way.
I'm telling you. Thank you, Museum of the African Diaspora, and thank you for joining us with our platform, Artist as First Responder, and for both of you and your work as responders, as essential workers. I love you, I see you.